We have an intense 85 minutes ahead of us, so good afternoon / good evening, everyone again. Nice seeing you again, for those of you who were with us on previous brainstorm and challenges, and welcome to those of you who are joining a challenge for the first time. I'll just a couple of words about the entire architecture of how things work within our CFC challenges, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's going to happen today. So as some of you might know already, this is one of the main vehicles of our CFC interactions. We have a brainstorming session where we discuss an initial idea with the guest speaker. Today we're going to have Michela Garibaldi from Chatham House Sustainability Accelerator, who will tell us a little bit about modern slavery. Welcome, Michela, by the way. Hi. I'll hand over to you later, but there'll be quite a few announcements. Sorry, we are a complex beast, and I'll have to explain all the layers of CFC. So yeah, and we have a number of challenges. This is our third challenge this year. We'll be looking at modern slavery. You had an opportunity to share your initial thoughts and ideas on the platform, and you did so. I think we had over 15 questions, and Michela will be looking at some of those today. So what we do is we look at those questions first, we discuss them in smaller groups during the brainstorming seminar, and then we open the challenge on the platform when you generate ideas and responses to that apply to your community, to you as a community here as the CFC. Some of those ideas will be transnational or between the various groups and individuals within CFC. And then we're going to have another event on the 29th of June, where we're going to meet with a few policymakers, and we're going to try to pitch those ideas and get feedback on the feasibility and the various adaptations of this idea to the reality out there. So that's it in terms of the big umbrella over us. By the way, I'm looking at some of your backgrounds here. Some of you are exposed to quite a bit of sun. That's great. If you want to switch your camera on to say hello to the others, even if you're not taking the floor, that's also a good way to reconnect on the platform. Now, what's going to happen today is we have, well, now just over 80 minutes, and it's going to be divided broadly into three parts. So we're going to have an opening statement by our expert and guest speaker for today, is Michela, and she will tell us a little bit about modern slavery in general, but also about your questions and ideas. You've asked quite a few questions, so bear with us while we try to tackle some of them, probably not all. And then we're going to have some time for questions and some follow-up answers from Michela. There will be 20 minutes for the initial intervention and then 15 minutes for a discussion. You can ask questions in the meantime using the chat function, or you can raise your hand later on. If you're posting a question that you would like me to ask, please note this in the chat already, so we know that you are unable or unwilling to ask the question yourself, and then we can do it for you. But let us know, so we don't have to waste time calling you every single time. So that's the questions, and then we're going to go into breakout groups. Depending on the numbers, we have 25, so 2 to 3 groups, depending on how many people will be there at the end. And then we're going to wrap up around 6:30. That's London for you. We shouldn't be finishing too late today, because it's going to be quite late in the day for some of you anyway. So you should know that we are on record, at least for the first part, so for the speaker's presentation, and then for Q&A, and we will not be on record for the small group discussions. That's only for you. So if you have any questions in the meantime, please use the chat function. Questions of technical nature to me or to the speaker, you can also drop it there. If we don't have any more announcements, we usually have a few, I'll hand over to our guest speaker today. That's Michela Garibaldi, who's a researcher at the Chatham House Sustainability Accelerator, and who'll be introducing the topic to us today. Michela, over to you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Max, and to the other from the team to inviting me to speak to a topic that is very, very close to my heart. What I did here with this picture is that what I think is the main difference of the modern slavery in the current society is that in the past century, it was around people owning other people. But now it's more around people exploiting other people. So this is really, really an important thing to focus on to shape then our research. So I will start with some definitions, and what I think you may also know is that there's no definition of what modern slavery is, because it can take so many different forms. It can involve human trafficking. We can go to forced labor. to what is bonded labor, to then also go to people that actually are treated as slaves, because this sort of status was passed down from the maternal line, to then, of course, the involvement of children into slavery, to then forced and early marriage. So as you can see from this initial slide, is such a complex issue that it's really, really hard to define it. But what we can do is to start also looking at some of the numbers of the main categories, which are around forced labor and bonded labor. So here, just to give you a global overview. The reason why I put this map in the slide is because it's clear that no country is free from modern slavery. And as you see on the right side of the slides, the numbers per 1,000 population people are quite shocking. And also the color shades in the slides indicates the prevalence of modern slavery, with, of course, like light red, orange being less prevalent and red being more. And also, for me, it was kind of interesting to see that even in Europe and here in the UK, we have a very light orange color. So this is just to say that I do believe that this is a very important discussion, and we should all make an effort to create space to have constructive dialogue, because it's a very rooted topic in our society. So some more numbers, not just because I like them, but because I think a good starting point to then shape a proper research to write policy recommendations. So we have around 40 million people that are estimated to be trapped in modern slavery worldwide. And these are data from 2018. But what I was also reading the other day is that some recent articles are suggesting that this phenomenon have been increasing in the past few years. So I can imagine that the number is even higher in 2021. We then, of course, have, let's say, if you can unravel the numbers, we have around 25 million people that we can, in a sense, like categorize in forced labor. We have around 16 million people that are living in forced marriages. And what is also interesting to see is that 1 out of 4 are children, and 71% are women and girls. So if we move on the other side of the slide, the right part, we have what I call the 5 tops, which means that the products that are at risk of importing modern slavery, and the values that you see are in US dollars. And what was really interesting for me to notice is that it's like something that we may know, but I didn't quite had in a way like the magnitude of the phenomenon. But when I look at the numbers, if you see like for laptops, computers and mobile phones, it's quite shocking. And also for garments, fish, cocoa and sugarcane. The reason why I'm showing you these numbers is that, as I said before, it's really useful to shape and to guide the direction of our interventions from like people from different age groups, let's say age or whatever, to then go into more the supply side with products and supply chains. So moving to country studies, I picked Africa and Europe as an example because what is really important is that it's kind of like a general, I think, believe is that we know that developing countries may be involved in some kind of like modern slavery, but actually the truth that lies beyond the surface is that also the more advanced countries are involved in some ways into this phenomenon. So as you see, the numbers from Africans are even more shocking than the one I think that I show you in the previous slide, because we have more than 9 million people that are estimated in being involved in any forms of modern slavery. And this number accounts for 23% of the global estimate for the world. And these numbers, which is like 62 out of, it's kind of like a weighted average with different factors in it that are all linked to governance issues and socially excluded people. So I think what is clear from this slide is that the region, unfortunately, performed very poorly in all the different estimates that I'm showing you. But if we move to the next slide for Europe, I was quite surprised because the numbers are still high. Of course, the proportion is different, the magnitude is different. But if we think that an advanced country should act as a leader and promote, let's say, reforms, I'm not sure if these numbers are like good ones. And one of the things that I would like you to notice is the two last percentage at the bottom of the two slides, because here we have on the total of people involved in modern slavery in Europe, 91% is around forced labor and 9% on forced marriage. But if we go back to these slides for Africa, it's kind of like the opposite, is the reverse. And I think this is a sign of what kind of legislation and laws have been implemented in the past decades to make like this difference in the percentage. So what are here the main implication? I think the main implication here touches on different things, from the economy to the business, to the environment and health. Of course, this is a very simplistic overview, and I'm not pretending to have all the, let's say, the answers to what is a very, very complex issue. But if we start from the economy, I would like to read a quote that I read this morning from Kevin Bales. Is the co-author of the Global Slavery Index. And what he said is that slavery is like a drag on the economy. And what most people don't realize is that it is acting as a blocker of sustainable development. Because for like some people, slavery is kind of like free source of labor, so they think it's high profitable, for instance, but actually it is not, because let's say development theories promote the idea that if you give people the resources to then invest in education, to spend money, you're actually creating and supporting the development of not just the local region, but even of the entire economy. And then you will also see your profits maybe be even higher than the one that you thought you would like making in using like slaves, unfortunately. If we go to the business impact of modern slavery, it's kind of like another, let's say, immense areas where we can include different aspects. But I guess the main thing for me is to really focus on the supply chains, because we know that globalization and all of that, all the products that we have they pass through a very complex of chain with different like steps. And the issue here, I think, is that the different production steps that we have are located in different regions with different legislations and with different like political institutions. So it's becoming harder and harder to really create a framework for us to unify and create a coherent narratives, to have also businesses to advance best practices or standards that they can apply in every step of their supply chains. I hope this is clear, but I will cover also into more details the supply chains bit later on in the areas of intervention. And then we have two different, let's say, emerging areas of research, which are at the intersection between modern slavery and environment and modern slavery and health. I would like to say that this is like emerging areas, so I don't know that much about it, but I believe that between modern slavery and environment, we have a sort of like a binary relationship, is a two-way relationship, because I believe that natural disasters and the climate crisis are, in a way, like increasing the risk of modern slavery, but at the same time, putting pressure on countries in adopting standards or reaching certain goals can act and push, especially companies or even governments, to not take action, to have weak regulations to tackle modern slavery. And then, of course, there's also the implication on health, because we all know that working conditions impact every aspect of our life, especially the health side. And I believe that I would say like exploitation is kind of like, let's say, an extreme working condition that, of course, is not helpful for health. But I believe that this area of research is even more complicated, because if we think we may also go further down the line to the psychological aspect of it. And I think there was like also a question on this. So I'm not sure if I've been clear enough, but what I've been presenting you is a way for me to say that modern slavery is such a multifaceted and complex issue with so many layers, that what I think is really needed is like a framework to gather the knowledge and all the collective efforts and initiatives that otherwise are just like isolated and are not like progressing anywhere. So my attempt here was to really map what are the four main players, let's say, in the field. Of course, we have government's role, but then we have also the international community, meaning like international organizations, for instance. But then there's also, of course, the part that businesses can do. And I will also add there's a part that as a society, as consumers, we can do. So I will start with governments. And I also saw a couple of questions that were around labor law and human rights and international trade regulations. And I believe these like two areas are so important and broad that they really deserve proper studies around it. And I will cover in a specific slides these two main areas. But then we go to the international community. And I think here the key thing is to raise awareness. And I saw one of the comments in the platform, and I think was a really, really powerful one. That is the need to create space for dialogue, because that is the starting point to then educate ourselves. So here I can make the link with society, because what I think is is a shift in our cultural attitudes and to what is the so-called responsible consumerism, and is about information and preferences. And then finally, I will also close with a slide around businesses, because we have the discussion around due diligence, best practices and standards, and data collection. So here, I start in a framework from the government side. And I think what is really important to notice is that on average, there has been an improvement in government actions in tackling modern slavery. And as you can see from the map, we have the top 10 countries that are taking action to tackle modern slavery. And I think just to name a few, we have the Netherlands, the United States, United Kingdom, but also we have Spain, Portugal, Sweden, Norway, and etc. And what was the main thing that these countries have been doing is really to, in a way, like integrate the different conventions that have been proposed in the past decades to have governments and to keeping them, let's say, more accountable, and also to create the sort of like enabling environment for businesses to operate in. Right. So this is the bit around the international community and the different conventions and the regulations that we have in place at the moment. I'm not that keen to go into details, so we can have also like a part on the Q&A on this, but as you can see, we have the UN Convention, which is focusing more on human rights generally. Then we have the ILO conventions, and here is still around human rights generally, but is really linking it to forced labor, which is one of the forms of modern slavery. But conventions is different from laws and regulations. So here, the different countries can decide to sign or not, to be part or not of the convention. At the European level, we also have the EU law, which is focusing on human rights, and it dates back to 1950. But then we also have more up-to-date information around non-financial disclosure. I'm not sure if you know about it, but it's basically the requirement to ask companies to disclose information that are not just related to, their profits, basically. And then we have here in the UK law, and I think one of the well-known acts around modern slavery is the UK one from 2015. And then, of course, one of the other countries that is in a way like leading the reforms is the US, which is kind of like is of course is quite different the way the system operates. But as far as I know, and I'm not definitely an expert on US regulations, is that they're very focused on supply chains, because they've been having issues with multinationals. So here's the part that for me is a key one, because I guess what people sometimes believe is that they believe that the sort of problems are governments and institutions' responsibilities to resolve, but I would disagree on that, because we can play a role on this. So why you think why I wrote like consumers' information, preferences and actions? Because in my mind, this is the way how our choices are made. And I believe that to create this sort of large-scale social change we need, it's about gathering and collecting the knowledge around something, which means having like a proper understanding of what modern slavery is, to then, of course, shape our preferences, which can vary from like deciding not to buy products that are at risk of modern slavery, or being involved in all the sort of like initiatives that are trying to tackle this phenomenon. And then we go into the actions bit. And here, what I would like to say is something that sometimes I even fail to believe in myself, is that we can't believe to change the world by doing everything. And we need, I think, to choose our battle. And that's why around the part of action is really important to be aware that in some ways there will always be a sort of like trade-off. So here I'm challenging you, and we can have like a proper discussion during the Q&A. What is the kind of action you would like to take to tackle modern slavery? It's more about maybe, I don't know, having an understanding of what some products you like to buy are made of, or maybe like, I don't know, researching more and going more into the, I don't know, NGOs or policy fields. And I think this is something that is really important for me as well, as I'm still trying to understand what I can do to solve this issue. And then I will end with a part around businesses and supply chains. And this is a very, very complex topic, and is what my master's dissertation. It was around global value chains, and there was also a part on modern slavery. So what I tried to do here is to structure around 3 levels of the issues related to businesses and their supply chains. So I start with structure and operations. So I think here what is really important is to start having a description, an understanding on what is the business models for a company, what is its missions, and what are the KPIs. And does the company have KPIs related to modern slavery or not? For instance, this is like a question that I have in my mind. And then we go into more the operation side, which is around reporting, standards, and requirements. But I believe that this is the surface of the problem, because of course you can do reporting, of course you can do auditing and all of that, but there's always been a part where data are still missing. So another question that is really important for me is how can we I don't know, solve this issue of lacking of data around supply chains. And I believe here is really important the technological progress or innovation, because we have like tools such as like blockchains and all of that may help us in dealing with this issue. But of course, we can have another kind of conversation around the unintended consequences of implementing these sort of like innovative tools. Sorry, I'm just like thinking about other stuff. Then we can go to mapping risks and actors, because I guess the second level of what we need to do to like, in a way, like push and incentivize businesses is to really ask them to identify areas where the risks of modern slavery are. So what are the steps? What are the locations in your supply chains that are at more risk of involving some forms of modern slavery? And here, I think what is really important is to identify the kind of relationships that you have with your suppliers, what are their roles and what they're responsible for. And I will close by saying that for companies, it's really important to create this collaboration and environment and the need for partnerships. with their suppliers, their contractors, but also with the key stakeholders they interact with. So what are the ways forward? So what we can do, and also what I would like you guys to discuss with, and also for you to focus for the other event at the end of June, is around what we can do to moving beyond the silos of knowledge, policy, and business practices. So for me, is the need to create this space for dialogue and communication between business leaders, research clusters, and policy bodies. So this for me is an area where there is the need to do more work and more research. And then we have a role in educating ourselves, which is the second level around educating consumers. So I believe was also one of the comments or questions we had in the platform around the education. And yes, I do believe that education is fundamental to really shape, in a way, the direction of travel. But then I would also end with more a fun and interesting part with the need to instill innovation and creativity. Because, of course, there's space for technological innovation and all of that. But for us, there's also space to have more creative solutions to start tackling this issue. And I'm closing by saying that I hope with everything I've been presenting you guys, it is clear that what is needed is this global framework to really collect resources and initiatives to implement sustainable solutions that can last over time. So thank you so much. And I think I can stop sharing now. And
great. Thank you very much.
Some questions? Yes, over to you, Max.
No, there will be some, and yeah, I'm afraid, yeah, over to me only briefly, because there will be questions, I guess, and thank you very much. This was very informative, and thank you for packing so much into such a short time. Now, do we have any questions that you would like to ask us now? We have about 10 minutes for questions. We will have to cut the session a little short because of the delay we've had in the start of this. If you'd like to raise your hand for a follow-up question. We had, I think, a request for clarification on the 93% of forced labor in Europe. If you go, I mean, you don't have to share the slide now, Michaela, yes. But there was a question here about the slide where you said, I think it was 91% for labor and then 9% for forced marriage. So my question in that context was that I guess that if you fall between two categories, the research puts sort of primary and secondary maybe, because there might be people who are in both position of forced labor and forced marriage, or does it always add up to 100? Because I think
no, it's always add up to 100.
Okay.
Yeah, in that case, yes.
Okay. Fine. Okay.
Oh yeah, I just saw a question on trade agreements, and I think yes, it's really important, and the trade area I think is one of the most complex one also. And I'm afraid what I haven't seen is that the integration of, let's say, provisions we're starting to integrating environmental provisions in trade agreements. I'm not sure that is happening for more social issues such as modern slavery. So I believe that is an area where more reforms is needed. And I think what I would also like to comment on is something that I read on the platform, which was a very, very powerful expression, which was around, yes, that modern slavery is an adaptive format of slavery to modern habits. And here we also had the link on education, and I do believe that not just to stress again on the education point, but we have two elements around education. The first one is giving opportunities to people to access to education. And this relates also to some comments around children's rights and poverty. And yes, because of course it's all interconnected. That's the thing with modern slavery. It touches on everything. It's such a complex issue that it touches on everything. And I do believe that education is one of the starting points, let's say even like the trigger point to start making changes. But also we have the other side of education, which is around educating ourselves, not just giving other people opportunities to access proper education, but also what we can do. And I would say like being very curious about what is going on. There are loads of initiatives, and I'm happy to share, and please reach out. I'm happy to share with you guys if you need what are the initiatives that are going on out there that can help us to shape our thinking on what are the policy recommendations that we can like put forward.
Great, thank you very much, Michelle. I didn't even. Yes. Okay. So yeah, Michelle, you okay? You did even acknowledge that already. Thank you very much. That you're fast. So thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. Now on the we had a follow-up question to the first discussion on forced labor and forced marriage. It was something we've actually discussed within the team in terms of policy responses. Because if you bring together forced marriage and forced labor, obviously under the umbrella of modern slavery, it does make sense. In terms of policy responses, it's probably a little tricky to address both at the same time. So kind of what are the overlaps and how do you deal with it policy-wise if you want to look at both? How useful is it?
Yes. And I believe it's actually one of the last thing that I also wanted to share with you guys, that I guess from my experience when we are trying to understand what are the policy recommendations is to really focus on just one thing. So my suggestion here is to either you focus on forced labor or like forced marriage, and then you start from there, because that will be the basis to then create a sort of structure to then move to other kind of issues. So I'm not sure what you will then decide to do, but the way I always do my research is that I try to separate the different issues, because otherwise, of course, you will always have kind of like overlapping areas in every subject you can dive into. So yes, that will be my suggestion. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? Because otherwise we've already divided you into two groups and we can spend some time discussing it in smaller groups. There's quite a few issues that Michela lined up for us, so we can go through them in smaller groups. Are we okay? No more questions? Okay, Michela, thank you very much for your time then. You know that this discussion is not quite over, so actually
Yes.
we now have this amazing privilege of having you on the platform as well. So if there are any follow-up questions, you can also use the platform to add them, and
Sure,
we'll
of
make
course,
sure that
yeah.
they get to Michela. So thank you very much for this. And then I guess Leah will be doing some Zoom magic for us to find ourselves in two separate spaces, and we'll follow up in a group discussion there. So we'll be looking at what does this look like where you are.
Best of luck for this challenge, guys.
Thanks a lot, Michela. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you around on the platform and then on
Sure.
the 29th. Thanks for
Yes.
that.